There are people who pass through your life like weather, a brief season, a passing storm, a momentary warmth. And then there are the others, the ones who arrive quietly, without intention, without warning, and somehow take up residence in the deepest corners of your mind. You don't choose these people. You don't plan for them. You don't even know why they matter. You just know that they do. And no matter how much time passes, weeks, months, years, you find yourself returning to them in flashes, in memories, in the soft ache beneath your ribs that refuses to fade. You try to reason with yourself. It's nothing. I'm over it. Doesn't matter anymore. But your mind knows you're lying. Your body knows you're lying. Your soul knows you're lying. Because if it was nothing, it wouldn't echo like this. There's a reason you can't stop thinking about them. But the reason is not what you expect. It's not simple longing. It's not loneliness. It's not that they were perfect or special or irreplaceable. It's deeper than that. Older than that. More psychological, more primal, more archetypal than anything you ever consciously understood. Some people don't enter your life. They enter your unconscious. And once they're there, their presence is not easily undone. You think it's about them. The way they looked at you, the way their voice lingered in your memory, the way your body reacted to theirs, the way the connection felt electric, cosmic, inevitable. But the truth is stranger than desire and deeper than emotion. You can't stop thinking about them because something in them touched something in you that you didn't know was still alive. Attraction is never simply attraction. It is recognition. A quiet, dangerous recognition between two parts of your psyche that were trying to find each other again. When you think about them, you're not just remembering a person. You're remembering a version of yourself that only existed in their presence. Maybe they awakened a softness in you you forgot how to feel. Maybe they stirred a longing that had been silent for years. Maybe they held a mirror to a part of your soul you didn't know was starving. Maybe they reflected back to you the intensity you hide from everyone else. That's why the thought of them lingers. Not because they were the only one, but because the version of you they awakened has nowhere else to go. But the connection wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just psychological. It wasn't just sexual. It was archetypal. Whether you realize it or not, something in them activated a symbol inside you. An old imprint, a forgotten wound, a buried longing, a hidden desire, a part of you shaped long before they ever appeared. And archetypes don't disappear just because you want them to. There's a reason certain people feel inevitable. There's a reason the memory of them feels mythic. There's a reason the attraction feels like gravity, something you didn't choose and couldn't resist even if you tried. It's because you're not thinking about a person. You're thinking about the part of your soul that they reflected. And reflection is intoxicating, especially when you've lived most of your life unreflected. Some people make you feel seen for the first time in years. Not because they understood you. If this content making sense to you, subscribe to the channel and thank you for your support. But because something in them resonated with the unspoken parts of you. And once your soul experiences recognition, it will not forget it. Not easily. Not quietly. Not without a fight. But there's another layer. The darker one. The one you hesitate to admit even to yourself. Sometimes you can't stop thinking about someone, not because they healed you, but because they reopened a wound you thought had already scarred over. The psyche is complicated. It will chase the person who awakened your longing just as quickly as it will chase the person who activated your abandonment. Because both are unfinished stories, and the mind hates unfinished stories, so you replay the conversations. You analyze the glances. You dissect their silence. You resurrect the moments that felt like possibility. You rehearse fantasies of what could have been, what should have been, what never had the chance to become. Not because you're obsessed, not because you're desperate, but because the unconscious is trying to solve a puzzle that your conscious mind doesn't understand. This is why the strongest attachments are often the least logical, the least stable, the least mutual, the least expected. Archetypal bonds don't care about logic. Trauma imprints don't care about timing. Unhealed wounds don't care about compatibility. Your psyche is not looking for a partner. It's looking for completion, for resolution, for integration. And some people enter your life carrying the exact shape of the wound you've never confronted. They trigger parts of you that were dormant. They open chambers inside you didn't know were locked. They activate the shadow in ways that feel erotic, terrifying, addictive, magnetic. You confuse that activation for love, for destiny, for connection, but what you're really experiencing is an invitation. Not an invitation to be with them, an invitation to meet yourself, to meet the longing you buried, to meet the desire you denied, to meet the fear you never resolved, to meet the wound you pretended didn't hurt anymore, to meet the parts of your soul that have been waiting for you to stop running. You can't stop thinking about them because your unconscious isn't done with the story. Not yet. Not until you understand why they mattered. Not until you see what they showed you about yourself. Not until the archetype they awakened has been integrated, not projected. Not until the wound they touched has been acknowledged, not avoided. People think obsession means something is wrong. But obsession is just unprocessed meaning, unfinished business, unclaimed desire, unlived life. You don't want them back. You want back the part of yourself you felt in their presence. That's why you can't let go. Because the truth is brutal and beautiful. They didn't change your life. They revealed the life you were meant to live. And the part of you that surfaced because of them is still trying to find its way home. There is a point, usually deep into the silence of your own mind, when you realize the thoughts you keep having about them aren't really about them at all. They're about what they awakened. They're about what you became in their presence. They're about what surfaced inside you that you've been unable to bury again. Because when someone enters your life with that kind of force, that uncanny familiarity, that emotional electricity, that gravitational pull that feels too strong to make sense, they don't just touch your heart. They touch your narrative. They alter the story you've been telling yourself. They shift the axis of your inner world. They open a door you didn't know existed, and now you can't forget the room behind it. Your obsession is not about a person. It's about an awakening, something in you woke up, and waking up is not something the psyche does quietly. It roars. It insists. It lingers. You try to distract yourself. You scroll. You keep busy. You talk to new people. You bury yourself in work. You tell yourself you've moved on. But every now and then, when the noise fades, when your guard drops, when the day ends and the night becomes honest, the thought returns. Not as nostalgia, not as longing, as a haunting. Because they didn't just enter your life, they entered your imagination, your unconscious, your emotional memory. You can forget a person. You cannot forget a symbol. And that's what they are to you now, a symbol. An archetype. A living metaphor for something your soul is still trying to understand. Maybe they symbolized desire you never allowed yourself to feel. Maybe they represented a kind of intimacy you've never experienced. Maybe they awakened a hunger you've spent years convincing yourself you didn't have. Maybe they carried the shape of a wound you've never fully healed. Maybe they reflected the version of you that you secretly wish you could become. But symbols never disappear. They echo until you listen. Everyone has a person like this. Someone who becomes less of a memory and more of a myth. Someone you can't forget because they revealed something you can't unsee. You keep thinking about them because they were a doorway, a passage into a deeper part of yourself. And some doors once opened can never be closed. But there's another layer, the one that feels darker, the one you hesitate to admit. Some people hook into you not because they were good for you, but because they activated a wound so old it feels like destiny. The psyche is strange. It confuses familiarity with fate. It confuses emotional chaos with intensity. It confuses unresolved childhood feelings with adult love. And when someone triggers a wound that never healed, the wounded part of you clings to them as if they are the missing piece. You're not obsessed with them. You're obsessed with the promise of resolution. You want the story to end differently this time. You want the wound to close. You want the abandonment to be undone. You want the rejection to reverse itself. You want the chaos to become safety. You want them to fix something they never broke. But no person can heal an injury they didn't cause. That's why the obsession never works. That's why the fantasy collapses. That's why the connection feels so heavy. You're trying to finish an emotional story that didn't begin with them. Your mind pulls them close because your soul is trying to finish a chapter that's been left open for too long. They were never the story. They were the trigger. And triggers don't let go until the truth is seen. But there's another, more primal reason they stay in your thoughts. Your bodies remembered each other even before your minds did. Attraction is not logical. Desire is not polite. The unconscious is not subtle. Sometimes the chemistry between two people is not about compatibility. It's about electricity. A collision of energies that ignite something you've kept dormant inside you. Sexual pull is powerful because it bypasses the intellect. It speaks directly to the shadow. The part of you that wants what it's afraid to admit. The part that holds your suppressed desires, your forbidden fantasies, your unspoken hunger. And when someone awakens your shadow, the experience imprints itself on your nervous system, not your memory. This is why thinking about them feels physical. Why remembering them feels visceral. Why you can feel their presence in your chest, in your stomach, in your breath, in the part of your body that reacts before your mind even catches up. Desire creates memory far deeper than emotion. And you're not just trying to forget a person. You're trying to forget the version of yourself that lit up in their presence. But that version wasn't imaginary. It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't an illusion. It was you without inhibition, without numbness, without the armor you wear around everyone else. They touched the part of you you've spent a lifetime keeping quiet. And now that it's awake, it refuses to go back to sleep. You can't stop thinking about them because your desire showed you a part of your soul that still feels unfinished. But longing is only half the story. If this content making sense to you, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for your support. Become what it could have been. Unfinished possibilities are emotional ghosts. The mind hates open loops, unanswered questions, unresolved endings. Could we have worked? Did they feel the same? What if I'd tried harder? What if I'd said what I really felt? What if the timing was different? What if we were meant for something that fear never let unfold? Possibility is a powerful drug. It's more intoxicating than reality, more addictive than intimacy, more persistent than memory. You're not haunted by who they were. You're haunted by who you might have become if you had let the moment unfold. The longing is not for them. It's for the alternate version of your life that you felt opening for a second and then watched disappear. That's why you can't let go. Because somewhere deep inside, a part of you is still standing in that doorway, imagining the life you didn't have the courage or the clarity or the timing to walk into. You're not obsessed. You're grieving possibility, and the grief of possibility is one of the deepest griefs of all, because there is no closure. Nothing ended because nothing began. So the mind holds the memory open, hoping for resolution, for understanding, for meaning, when really, all it wants is integration. You don't need them back. You need the parts of yourself you abandoned when they left your life. You need the desire they awakened. You need the vulnerability they exposed. You need the truth they unlocked. You need the courage you felt around them. You need the aliveness that surged through you whenever your paths crossed. Because these were never gifts they gave you. They were parts of you that surfaced in their presence. You can't stop thinking about them, because your soul is trying to reclaim those parts of you. The obsession ends not when you forget them, but when you finally meet the version of yourself they stirred awake. You're not longing for them. You're longing for you. You begin to understand something you were never taught to see. You're not thinking about them. Not really. Not anymore. You're thinking about the part of yourself that you only met because of them. A version of you that was more alive, more open, more honest, more exposed, more vibrant, more awake than you had allowed yourself to be in years. They didn't create that version of you. They revealed it. And that revelation is what haunts you. Because once you glimpse the part of your soul that has been waiting in the dark, you cannot go back to pretending it doesn't exist. You can forget a person, but you cannot forget yourself. They stay in your mind because your unconscious is still holding on to the doorway they opened. Not the relationship, not the idea of them, not the fantasy you built, the doorway, the access point into a deeper layer of your psyche, a layer you've been avoiding, denying, sedating, distracting, performing over. And now that it's open, your soul refuses to close it. Because this wasn't about love or lust or timing or destiny, or maybe it was, but not in the way you think. It was about recognition. They recognized something in you that you had forgotten, something that had been buried under years of survival, years of silence, years of emotional self-erasure. And the part of you that was seen, however briefly, is now asking, where did you hide me? Why did you abandon me? What else could your life be if I returned? This is why the thought of them hurts. This is why you replay everything. This is why they appear in dreams, in quiet moments, in the breath between distractions. They awaken the self you lost. And that self has not stopped knocking. But there's another layer still, the one that sits beneath desire, beneath grief, beneath longing, beneath the ache that feels like gravity pulling you backward. Some people stay in your mind because the connection with them mirrored a connection you never had with yourself. You weren't addicted to them. You were addicted to the feeling of being unhidden. And the moment they left your life, that feeling went with them. So the psyche, desperate and confused, chases the closest thing it can still grasp, the memory of the one who awakened it. But memories cannot love you back. Memories cannot touch you. Memories cannot grow with you. Memories cannot meet you where you're going. They can only remind you of what you are capable of feeling. And that reminder is both a blessing and a wound. Because if you strip away the longing, if you peel back the fantasy, if you burn through the illusions, you find something quietly devastating underneath. You don't want them. You want the version of yourself you became when your soul felt safe enough to step into the open. You're not haunted by their presence. You're haunted by your own potential. The potential that flickered in you when their eyes met yours. The potential that reached toward them in the space between breath and touch. The potential that whispered, "See me, let me exist." And for a moment, a fleeting, fragile, unforgettable moment, you let it. That's why the memory hurts. Because it wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just chemistry. It wasn't just emotional tension. It was resurrection. A part of you came back to life, and now it refuses to die again. This is the truth most people never realize. You can't stop thinking about them, because your psyche is asking you to reclaim the parts of yourself you left in that moment. The longing is a message. The obsession is a signal. The ache is a map. The memory is a mirror. Every time they appear in your thoughts, your unconscious is whispering, "Go back for yourself." Not for them, for you. Because the version of you that felt alive with them, that version still exists. It's been waiting. Trapped in the memory you keep revisiting, too afraid to step forward because you've mistaken it for a person instead of a path. You don't need them to feel that way again. You only need access to the self that they awakened. But that is what terrifies you, if you admit that the obsession is about you, not them. Then you are responsible for bringing that lost self back into your life. You can no longer wait for someone else to trigger your awakening. You can no longer rely on their presence to open the door to your depth. You can no longer hide behind the fantasy of what could have been. You must become the one who pulls that self out of hiding. You must become the one who carries your own longing. You must become the one who makes space for your own desire. You must become the one who chooses your own aliveness. They were never the destination. They were the catalyst, a spark, a mirror, a turning point, a symbol, a summons. And the reason they stay in your mind is simple and devastating. Your soul is trying to tell you that you are not done becoming, not done growing, not done awakening, not done reclaiming, not done meeting the parts of yourself that still tremble in the dark, waiting for you to reach out your hand. You don't miss them. You miss the doorway they opened. You miss the self you felt rising. You miss the aliveness you touched. You miss the version of you that stepped forward for a moment and then retreated back into memory. But here is the truth that ends the haunting. That version of you was never theirs to give you. It was always yours. And the moment you understand that, the obsession dissolves, not because you force it, not because you suppress it, not because you move on, but because you finally realize that the person you can't stop thinking about was never the point. You were the point. You were always the point. And the moment you reclaim yourself, you stop longing for the one who merely revealed you.